Unlocking Success, the podcast where we delve into the journeys of individuals who have transformed ambition into achievement. I'm your host, Tom Paulson, Sales Director at Haus. Today, we have the pleasure of speaking with Talia Besser, Associate Director at Haus, whose journey from retail and telephone sales to thriving in Dubai's luxury real estate market is truly inspiring. Talia has spent the past 9 years mastering the art of real estate, driven by her passion and relentless dedication. From growing up in Melbourne, Australia, to building a successful career here in Dubai, Talia's story is one of resilience, ambition, and authenticity. We'll explore how her family background in real estate shaped her career, her journey to Haus, and how she maintains motivation in a highly competitive market. Talia, thank you.
Thank you.
It was. That's the best intro I've done. Thank you so much, first of all, for joining. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
First and foremost, I will congratulate you on your Director's Choice Award 2024.
Thank you very much.
And of course, Associate Director this year.
I know,
so well done.
It's been a great couple of months, hasn't
I know.
it?
We'll come on to that. But yeah, I just wanted to get that out of the way because that is the most important thing. So
Tom,
it's really
it.
well deserved. On that, I remember when we were doing the Director's Choice, we have to kind of do a bit of a vote at the end of the year. And I hadn't been working with you for too long, I guess, in that sense. Arabian Ranches. And so it's more like Jack and Charlie who were doing that. Jack was obviously pitching hard. I've done my part as well. But the common word that came up for you to describe you best, what do you think that was?
Driven?
No, it was. I think it was something that like resonated with me. It was like passionate.
Okay.
And that's been genuine. And I think it's really hard to find like genuinely passionate people about work.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's for a lot of people who, even out here, they do really well and great people and great customer service and whatnot, but to actually find people with passion is quite hard. It's a rare thing, right? You either have that or you don't.
That's a good description as well, actually. And so I'm like, okay, that's a good one to push forward.
Where do you think that? Oh, I'm glad that leads in nicely.
Could have been something else.
Yeah, we have to keep it PG. There are kids watching, but I won't tell you the other things they said. But where do you think that passion comes from then? Like, was that ingrained in you, or was that like family, or was it?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Tom. I think for me, I actually started working probably, I don't know what it's like in the UK, but for Australian standards, I was working even, I think, at 14 years old, working in cafes and, just getting experience for work. And I also just wanted to always have my own money. Like I really didn't like going to my parents and asking for money and, having to beg or, whatever it might be. Not that I had to do that, to be honest, but, I just wanted to have my own. And that was kind of where I started my career. I think obviously school for me wasn't something that I loved. But once I started getting out on the workforce and doing, a few different sales jobs that led me into the real estate market, I just realized how much I enjoyed being in like a customer facing business. And that was something that I enjoyed, just working with people and meeting new people. And I think that was the beginning of the passion to go, I really enjoyed being in a sales position. And then coming here, obviously, which I'm sure we'll get into, but coming here and, seeing the opportunity that Dubai has and what you can do in this place and what opportunities Haus have and yeah, it's just that was where my passion was from.
Nice. That's a great answer. No, I actually, once again, my ears pricked because on interviews, when for people wanting to apply to work here, I never try and make it a really formal interview. It's always just a chat, right? It's a people job. And I'm never going to be asking them questions of tell me a time you've done this. But I always try and get into when their first job was, because I think I was like you, I had a job at 14 with my friends serving pies at the football match, and we used to walk there and used to watch the second half of the football for free, so we used to love it and get paid like £30, which is about 150 dirhams or whatever, but we loved it.
The time you're like, oh.
I know, but I think it says a lot about someone's character and also like their upbringing, as in like either being forced to work and like you have to understand the value of money and have to work for it, and I think it's super important. And we have got so many people from different backgrounds here, wealthy, not wealthy, whatever. But, I think the fact that anyone who works early or has been told and it's ingrained in them to work hard for your money and understand the value of it, because then you appreciate it more and you actually, like you said, this is how passions develop, right? So
100%.
It's interesting. I never knew that about you.
There you go. Little waitress.
Yeah, no, it's good. But like you said, I mean, it's sales itself, right? Getting the tips and everything. It's soon, it definitely, like you said, it's a customer facing job. This is a people job, and it definitely put you in good stead. What So your family obviously ingrained work into you early.
Yes.
So their line of work, to my understanding, is real estate as well, right?
Correct.
Yeah?
Correct. So
did that have an imprint on you and in part of your now passion for real estate?
Definitely. Well, to be honest, my family background originally, so my mum was a fashion buyer and my father was owned a fashion label. So that's them. So they actually started in fashion, but going back to my grandparents, they were in the property business as well. So it was a bit of both. Obviously my brother owns a real estate agency called Besser & Co. in Australia. She is a very successful agency. I've watched him work very, very hard over the last, I think it's 15 plus years that he's owned that agency. And then my father is a developer. So he obviously builds properties, it's kind of boutique luxury apartments. And
the nice videos you
post. Yeah. So I'm trying to, not only sell in Dubai now, I'm also trying to see if I can tap into, the distant Australian market. Maybe some buyers from here would invest there. You never know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I always grew up in a way that my father would develop these properties and we would live in them, and then maybe a year later we would sell or whatever else. So I did move around a lot as a kid just because that was part of my father's business. And then obviously doing from about, when was it, 2016 or so, I was working in my brother's agency after I worked in the call center, because I was like, all right, I'm selling online education is great, but I think you can make a bit more money from selling houses than you can that, even though that was an amazing experience. And I think the call center really set me up with being able to do the cold calling, because that is what that job is a little bit, and then moving that into real estate. So yeah, obviously did that. And it's 2 years there, which again, I learned so much from my brother, and then kind of wanted to see what it would be like not working with just family and working in another agency. So I did that for another 2 or so years with a really big agency called Biggin & Scott. Again, they were a powerhouse in the sense that they were selling, 100 properties a year. The guy I worked under was one of the, let's say, MDs of the company. So it was very, very transactional. Saturdays would look like 7 a.m. in the office until 6:30 p.m. Doing about 5 to 6 auctions, and it was just insanely high pressure. But again, he really did help me a lot as well in terms of moving into that kind of area.
Amazing. So on that, when you worked for your brother, did you find that there was more pressure working for your brother or working for a big, more corporate-esque or bigger, player?
Yeah, I think
for somebody else that's not your family.
Yeah, I think
or they're two very similar but different.
Very similar but different. I think there was definitely pressure. Obviously, working in a family business, there always is. I think it was a different kind of pressure. I think when you work with family sometimes, and I was quite young when I first started working in real estate. I was probably 19, around that age. And, you're still young. I obviously wanted to be doing that, doing real estate, and I loved it. But I think when it's a brother and sister relationship, I think I was maybe too young at that time to fully understand what I was doing. And, there's always that, how do you go from brother, sister to, director to being the PA, let's say, at that time. So I think that's another reason why I was like, okay, maybe it's good for me to not work under family and see what it's like. And I can't say certain things to a different person that maybe I'd be tempted to do so with family, right? Because you're more comfortable with family, of course.
I reckon if I was in that position, that you take things a lot more personally with the family business.
Correct, yeah.
And therefore, every review, every client interaction, every thing everyone says about your business or family business is like, it means so much.
Correct.
But then, like you said, it's good for you to have the other side of it, to know that, because he probably treated you different to he might treat other staff. So it's quite good for you to learn all sides of it being,
And as much as we tried for that not to happen, like he's an incredible agent, and watching what he's built in Australia is phenomenal. Like he's amazing. So I was very lucky to have learned from someone like him at the beginning of my real estate career. But then obviously separating that and being under someone that was not my family, and I couldn't maybe say I'm going to be a little bit late today, things like that you try and get away with family. It just kind of set me up a little bit to have a bit more structure and discipline, I think. So that's why it was probably a really good experience for me to do that prior to moving over here.
Very good. And like you said, the cold calling, the education thing put you in good stead. And Because that's also another thing we look for. People say they've done phone work and phone jobs, but they don't realize actually that out here it's a lot of outbound phone calls as opposed to dealing with internal leads that are coming in, and they're two very, very different ball games. And it's like, I think when they come here, it's a shock to them to actually have to try and, you know, generate leads and convert business in that sense. Which I'm sure, as you know, from day one, you come in, I remember you coming in, we'll come on to that now then. So you've done well at your brother's place, or it set you up to do well in the bigger firm or the more corporate machinist-esque. So then what was like the trigger moment where you were like, I want to leave Australia and come to Dubai and do a commission only role here and not know anything really about this market? How was that?
Look, it was my partner, actually. He was here from 2018. So we'd actually met in 2017. 6 months later, he's got a job in Dubai. Again, at that time, I think Australians' perception of what Dubai was very different. I don't think that Dubai was as on the map as it is now globally. Sure. So when he said he was moving, I was like, all right, well, enjoy. And we actually ended up doing long distance for that time. I was actually meant to come in 2019. And at that point, I was actually doing a very popular show in Australia called The Block, which is like a big renovation show. And then top agents get selected to sell the properties, and it's all televised and everything.
So you've been on TV, yeah?
Yeah.
So The Block.
The Block, yeah. It's a really
Are there any videos flying around of you?
I'll show you later.
Nice. There'll be a link in below the show notes.
And that was an unbelievable experience. So at that time I was just loving work. You know, I was there for about a year and a half, and me and Andrew Crotty, who was the MD, and I was his PA at the time, were like a bit of a powerhouse together. And I was like, I just can't leave yet. I've got more here. So I didn't come. And then obviously it got to the point at the end of 2019 where it's like, okay, either I come or, you know, we can't, he's definitely staying here. He was really happy here. He had an amazing job. Everything was going really well. And so just had to make the decision. And to be honest with you, Tom, I don't know if you actually know this, I was only meant to come here for 3 months. Okay. Or 4 months. So my place in Melbourne.
To work, or just literally your plan was just to
trial. So okay. I was like, okay, look, obviously I wasn't sure what was going to be like. And yeah, obviously my place in Melbourne was still fully furnished, sitting there. 2020 came, obviously saw what Dubai was, saw everything that was happening, and also lockdown. So we couldn't get back to Australia. And obviously at that point when the borders were closing in Australia, I was like, what do I do? Obviously the world was upside down at that point in 2020. And I made the decision, you know what? Mum, Dad, help me out. Please pack up my place. I'm going to stay. This place is for me, and I can see a future here, although it was a very weird time. And yeah, there you go.
So maybe if them lockdowns ever happened, you might not be here.
Who knows?
Really? It's quite ironic how I'll play it out. But so the 3-month trial, so how did you end up through the doors at Haus then? Because when we were speaking before, I don't think you originally interviewed with us. Is that right?
So basically, when we were moving over here, I was doing a few interviews online. Haus, I had actually heard about the company. I was kind of looking at some other ones at the time, and all the interviews I was doing. When I realized what was going on with the secondary market, such as, sellers don't pay fees, nothing's exclusive, all these things, I was like, I don't know if I can do this.
Is that because it's very much that case in Australia? For those who don't know, just have a grasp of the Australian market. Yes. Is that heavily a bit like the UK, where you work for the vendor, the seller?
Correct.
They pay you. You have to pitch to them.
It was basically Australian real estate flipped. So everything was flipped. So I was quite, let's say, like taken back with how it worked here. And I guess at that time I felt like Dubai was maybe a little bit less regulated than it is now. So everything that I was being informed by these agencies, I was like, oh my goodness. So I actually was thinking of doing off-plan. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do off-plan, which I actually signed, as you know, with an off-plan company. And then at that time I got introduced to someone that lived in the same complex as me. Obviously he mentioned Haus, and I was very interested because when he showed the promo video for Haus, obviously the marketing looked amazing. It had a really similar feel to what I was used to in Australia. And not only that, Josh Fegan was on the intro video, and I was like, what? I'm like, and obviously having that familiar face was because Josh Fegan was someone that I did work with in Australia for real estate training with Biggin and Scott. Yeah. that was obviously.
So for those who don't know, Josh Vegan is like our company mentor, I would say. He's been working with us since, over maybe 7-8 years now. Must be about 7 years. I came here 8.5 years ago, so he was about a year in or so. But so he's a world-class, well-renowned real estate trainer who is from Australia, who naturally does more work over there than we're exclusive here with us. But I know he does a bit in the UK. But so he done training for your company who you work for?
Once a month we had a big training session with Josh with the whole business basically.
Yeah.
So I called Josh and he was like,
to validate.
I'm like, I moved to Dubai. He's like, oh my goodness, house and house. I'm like, yeah. That was basically the conversation. So and I met with Luke Remington, and I was, I came in, I felt like some of the other agencies, their approach was also quite pushy, and that wasn't really something that I liked. And whereas when I sat with Luke, he was just very casual. I felt like he also was very knowledgeable about the Australian market. He was really researching the Australian market, wanted to bring some of what we do in Australia to the House and House brand. And, at that time we were in the other office, and I think he even mentioned, like, we don't have a big flashy office or anything like that, but this is us. And I was like, this feels like a family to me, not just, and that's something that I was obviously used to from my background with my family agency. And even the bigger agency in Australia was also a very kind of family orientated business, and that's something that I was like, this is where I want to be.
Oh, nice. That's a good story. I think, like you said, you probably naturally wouldn't have heard of houses compared to, we're not the huge machine as such that we are now. We're nearly 500 probably headcount across all the service lines and all the different departments, and we definitely didn't have that then. We were in one office, even though it was relatively quite a large office compared to what I was used to, but compared to this, it's obviously a bit of a drop in the ocean in that sense. But I was the same. I met them. I had one offer from a really large company, and I was quite set on them. I walked into their office. I remember I had to come out and see it for myself. I came on a holiday and then slipped off for a couple of interviews. And then, I was set on them. It felt like I was in an episode of Suits, you know what I mean? Like these big skyline views of downtown. And I was like, but then I came and met Luke. I'd done my interviews with James, but I didn't see him in person. That was all on Skype at the time, going back. And,
how long ago was that?
I joined in November 2016.
Okay, well.
And I started the process maybe that year, but like earlier, maybe like May-ish time. Yep. And then I came out in the summer, and it was they were moving from where we worked together. They were in an office even below that, which is even smaller. And there was like carnage. There was loads of boxes. Everything was going on. I'd just come from this really fancy office to chaos. And I was like, is this like legit, And, but meeting them face to face, like you say, I met Luke and I met Simon. It kind of, like you said, it felt like you were going to be more than just a number as such. And I know that we risk that getting bigger and bigger. People can use that against us, but now there's so much more support, management and trainers, and so much more like levels of this. But it still feels, I hope that people feel like the support is there, that we're not like some big corporate outfit where you can't have access to people who would make this. Everyone's got an influence. If you wanted something doing and it was perfectly valid. I hope that if you've been here 2 weeks or 5 years, that you have that say. You obviously be the answer of that, but I believed in them. They said, trust us, this process, that we will get to what you've just seen and bigger. But as I always say now, it's not about being the biggest, it's the most trusted. And that's where it resonated with me. I was massively into reviews and testimonials and repeat business. I understand the power of that for longevity. To me, I had a passion. this is a career. It's not just a 2-year flash in the pan or a 3-month flash in the pan maybe for you. But
it wasn't really that I was going to it was more so as a safety, because obviously I'd never lived with my partner before. So I was like, are we going to be able to do that? I think it was also just having a bit of a safety net, because at that time, like Australia to Dubai, that was not a common thing for people of my age. I was like 21, 22. And
you set the trend, right? Because we've had quite a few Australians since join us. And genuinely, I'm not just saying this because we're talking, but generally they do it better there is, I think, a bit more skill. I think there's a bit more of a renowned profession compared to like UK and maybe even here in that sense. And I know the earning potential is probably higher here. Might be wrong, but
it is.
For majority of people, of course, you're going to get the upper echelons of people who are amazing performers in Australia. But I imagine it has to take years and years to get there.
Yeah.
But how long has your brother been building for?
Yeah, I think it's approximately about 15 years.
Right.
So,
and you've seen what you've achieved in 5 years.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's but you've seen people even come after a year or two, right? And what you can achieve. In Australia, could you even do that?
You can. But the thing is in Australia is that, and the difference between here and Australia is that you have to have been in the market and been known in the market for a lot longer, I think. So, obviously we have a lot more opportunity here because, even when I first started, I could call a seller and say, I've got a buyer for your property. Can I bring them? Whereas in Australia, a lot of these sellers are kind of locked into exclusive contracts. And if you did call a seller that was under an exclusive contract, you can actually get some serious fines for that. So I guess as annoying it is,
they can maybe introduce. What do you you were talking about the pain points that you researched and that you found out about when it actually came into play out here. How long did it take you to start getting your head, like you said, it's flipped, right? And for me, it took a long time. My figures, I've said this openly, for 5 months were terrible. Like you'd think that I'd never done this job before, and I'd done it in the UK for 5 years, and super frustrating. Because I just couldn't get my head in. It all seemed just backwards and wrong and didn't make sense, you know? But for you, what was the case? Like, how was your journey into the role when you actually got here through the door? Did it take a while to do your first sale, or?
No, look, and that's a really good question. And that's something I also want to deep dive into a little bit, is the timing, or when I came to Dubai, and obviously where House and House was, like, obviously Jack had experience in Arabian Ranches. The team at that time was, Risty and Keith, and then me and Jack basically started around that time as well. And I was also quite lucky that in a way that it was smaller. So I did get a lot more help and, whatever else. And I think it also was, the fact that I was learning from someone that already knew what Dubai is, what the ranches is. And to be honest with you, I was one of those agents that came in and was like, I want to be Palm and Marina. Like, everyone does. I think when they first come here, they think that that's the only area that Dubai has to offer. And I got taken out to Arabian Ranches, and at the beginning, and I think you were one of the people that took me out to have a look at the Ranches Souk and the community centre. Do you remember?
We had the stand up there.
Yeah.
I was probably sat there on a Saturday losing my mind on that stand, but no, it was good. It was we were embedded, start to become embedded in the community.
The best thing. It was some days, when you did 3 to 9 on a Sunday, you were like, oh. But other than that, other than that, it was. I did meet a lot of clients that today I have that are future, like they're hopefully for life, let's say, but they're repeat clients that I work with all the time. But I think in terms of when I first started, having that support that I had around me, there wasn't that many, agents within the team. So that also did help me a bit, but it was hard to actually adjust. And actually, it was hard to adjust. However, I feel like it was really good timing. Like maybe if I came in now, obviously the team is quite big. However, it was, being able to start the database with the Ranches team at a point where the team wasn't as big. So I've grown with House and House and with the team.
Absolutely. And credit to Jack and Jack Smith. He's associate director, also the area manager for Ranches. He's really, like, you were the first hire of his.
So he was,
and he was just recently he just joined us from another firm. And I think that, if you told him that it would get to where it is now, we're arguably one more, we like to think we're the best agency there. Everyone's going to say who they think. I think
we actually are. It's been proven or it's been shown on platforms.
And it's not about self-gloating of that, but it's just the fact that we were very much nowhere near market share penetration in terms of being leaders, and now we've grown with the right people, though, right? I know it's got bigger, but it's built over the last 5 years into and to me, it's like the blueprint how I want every team to be. I think if you spoke to another company and said, they've got 10 people doing Arabian Ranches, they'd be like, well, that's far too many. But for me, I just believe that, the levels of stock that we bring, the levels of buy we can service them fully. Like there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to sell.
Yeah, there's enough to go around. But I think, when the team first started, and, you know, I think back to it all the time, like how it all began. And, you know, there was a level of trust when I came in with Jack to be like, you know, I didn't know him. And I was like, you know, okay, you told me that this company's good. What, you know, and the Ranches is good. But there was also like, I'm so glad that all panned out the way it did.
I know. Yeah, it's good. It's a good story. So what was your first sale? Do you remember?
It was a Palmera B-type, Villa 35.
Nice.
In Palmera 3.
Yeah.
And I'd actually had another deal agreed, and the seller pulled out last minute. They changed their mind. Yeah. And that really got to me at the time, because it didn't really happen in Australia, because how it works in Australia is, you know, sellers pay marketing. So they're
up front.
Yeah. $10,000, $15,000.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
In marketing. So that you usually, if you get an offer within where they would accept, like it's a done deal, really. Yeah. And also because every property comes with already a contract before the sales campaign starts, well, you don't have kind of the offer, then make the contract, then do the deal. It's people request the contract. When they give an offer that's kind of within the amount that the seller will agree, they put it on the contract, and then you go with that contract to the seller and obviously push to get that signed on the spot. So that's another thing that was kind of flipped.
So you always delivered offers face to face?
Always.
Yeah, and we were told to do that in the UK as well. I think it's something out here that people actually don't even think about doing, but you know, it's always WhatsApp, it's always phone calls. I think we need to, it's something definitely that I find people that push for meetings and push for, you know, it can be out the norm for people. They're not used to it, but it is the difference, I think, you know, getting face to face with people and actually building that from the beginning, ideally, not at the very end.
Yeah.
So would you say that, so how long did that take you, to do that first deal?
I'm pretty sure it was about 6 weeks.
Okay, so that's actually reasonably
We drove to Abu Dhabi to get the contract signed.
Nice.
Jack came with me. I remember I was like freaking out. I remember he was actually trying to get an extra like 20 or 30K fee, and I was like, stop it. Like, let me get this signed. And he's pushing this guy to sign it. And there was agents all over the seller, and I'm sitting there shaking at Starbucks. And, you know, really, it was literally just before we went into lockdown.
That's when it was probably like paper contracts as well, right? It wasn't all electronic. So you actually physically had to go and do it. Right now, you don't even have to, you could be anywhere in the world and accept it and sign, right?
Correct. So
different times back then.
It was a different time. And I just remember like just panicking a lot, which that was something definitely in the early stages of my career that I did a lot. I'm trying to stop.
Hey, listen, like you said, so
it's because I care.
Exactly. It's because you care. We'll call it passion.
Yeah, we'll call it passion. That's the word. That's the word.
Listen, I'd worry more if you didn't care.
Yeah.
You know, it's hard to brush things under the carpet if it's all, you know, if it's stressful. But ultimately, you're really busy, right? You're going to have a lot of plate spinning and so on. So it's natural to be stressed and whatever. But it's worth it, hopefully, in the sense of like that actually leads me really quite well on to like, how do you... Because obviously I see how busy you are and how like you've done so well over the last three years. Would you say you've really like kicked on big time?
Yeah.
And like in terms of figures wise and so on. How are you managing? Like, how do you manage your downtime? Like, you know, what do you do for downtime? Do you manage to switch off, or how do you make sure it doesn't get all on top of you? Because it can very easily do that, right?
Yeah, and you don't want to burn out. And that's something that you're so in the moment, and you also, you know, it is hard. I would say it's actually very hard to switch off in this job.
And that's what I was going to say. Like, do you actually switch off?
Like, people in the team would laugh and say that, you know, they know I'm always contactable when I'm on holidays, and I'm always, you know, on my phone, and, you know, you're going to burn yourself out and whatever else. Look, I haven't burnt myself out yet. I like to be not in charge, but I like to know everything that's going on. Like, as you know, Tom, you know, when a sale's done, it's never done until it's transferred, right? Yeah. So if you kind of take your eye off the ball and, you know, kind of just leave things, sometimes, you know, that's not the best way to do it. So I am always making sure I'm on top of everything. I do try and give myself as much as I can a Sunday, you know, just try do some viewings in the morning. and then, you know, maybe go enjoy, you know, some exercise or go sit by the pool or go for a walk down the beach. So try and give myself that time. But obviously if it's really busy, you might be working 21, 28 days straight, and that's okay. And then you do your travels when it's the time to travel. If it's Eid or if it's, you know, during the summer when it is a bit quieter, you kind of just go away when everyone else is. And it's kind of, I think when you enjoy the job, you don't mind, you know?
And that's it. And I think it's more stressful when you haven't got anything on the go, right? As opposed to worrying about all these deals and so on. They're two different types of stresses, but
correct.
I think that's when people start more panicking than anything, which is never a place that you want to be,
Deal
right?
Panic.
Yeah, exactly. So, but you know, it's, so now we're here in 2025. And like I said at the very beginning, you know, you've won the Director's Choice last year, which I know was really quite important. Well, it's not important to you, but it meant a lot to you.
It did mean a lot to me, yeah, definitely.
Not that you were pushing to win it, but because
where's my award?
Yeah, but it's good recognition, right?
Yeah, no, it felt nice.
Important recognition.
It felt nice, and that led to, you know, what happened in quarter 1. So there you go. No,
yeah,
it was worth it.
You've had a brilliant quarter 1 of 2025, and then you've with that, because our associate director titles that we give they're hard to get, right? Let's be honest.
Yeah,
I was saying this in an interview again, reverting back, but it's quite funny that there was someone saying to me, I love the brand, I love this, love that, but the only thing that is concerned is companies offering X amount of commissions, which is higher than yours initially. Now, for context, ads can reach 70% commissions and 60% and what all these people quote, but I was saying to her, like, the reality is that we put so much, like I've only just really learned this in the last year and sitting with a lot of the marketing. They've got over 30 people in that team. The marketing budget is absolutely huge, like the investment that goes back into the business. Like I said, all the different layers of management and the trainers and all these different departments that are now introduced. So we provide the full 360 service, and we're on the TV, we're on the radio, we're on in newspapers all the time so that when someone picks up the phone, they know who House & House are.
Yeah.
So you can start from day one.
Yeah.
There's already an element of trust there.
Yeah.
I said, you can go to another company. We're not the right company for you if that's all you're interested in, because what do you get for that? That's something you'll have to ask them. But if we can provide, I can provide probably 2 sides of paper of what the agent gets for that 50%. But and I told her, like, there's certain companies where our good performers would be associate directors within a year based on their number. They've had a really good first half of the year, and it's like, it's not to say they don't deserve that title, but they're not at that level. They're not at that level of having a full understanding, a holistic understanding of the market, of the business, of how all the nuances of how this place works. Yeah. So to have that, in my opinion, should be an esteemed title.
Correct.
Should be really hard to achieve in that sense. Not, of course, impossible, but you know, and clearly not. There's the likes of you've now won it. We've got probably 15 plus associate directors now but it rewards loyalty. It rewards like the right behaviors more than the money side, in my opinion. So yeah, absolute credit to you for getting that. And I know it takes time to get in sometimes, but hopefully it kind of gives you that reassurance.
Yeah, it does. It does.
What did it mean to you?
Oh, it meant a lot, to be honest with you. Like, I think, you know, as you said, my kind of figures yearly have, you know, been quite consistent. I've always tried to make sure that I track everything and, you know, that I'm going up, not down every year. And that's something that I do take note of. But yeah, the associate director was honestly like probably one of my biggest achievements, I'd say, I've ever done. And I think also being, obviously Yana is in off plan, but for me being for residential sales, it's just being, and people have come up to me and said things like, oh, it's inspirational. And I've never thought of myself like that. So to actually, you know, hear that, it's just like, oh my God.
Well, I think your inspiration, I mean, if you're sort of alluding to being a female and inspirational, like absolutely. But even for males, you should be an inspiration for them as well, right? You do the job brilliantly. You're super diligent, super, you know, as I said, when we go back to it, like passionate is such a big word, but it's hard. I can't teach people to be passionate. You've got that or you haven't, but you can do the basics right. And I think just understanding the value of customer service and repeat business is such a fundamental to doing well. And I think that you can see it with all your reviews. Like even now, I remember one of our first interactions when I came sales director, you were complaining to me that your Google review wasn't showing. Like it was like bugging you that much. And I thought, you know, I'm the same. I love the reviews. I've, definitely I got on a trip with the company because of that.
How much did I annoy you about that?
No. It's not annoying because I understand it. Now to someone else, they might be like, does it matter that much?
Yeah.
But it clearly does, right? For you. And it should for everyone. But that proved to me, I was like, wow, like you can do as many deals as you want, but the 5-star review that couldn't get on the page because it wasn't working meant probably the most. Right?
Yeah, for sure.
I think that sums it up quite well.
For sure.
So what's next then? So because this is what I always not worry about, but people reach really high. You achieve everything that you set out to achieve in in terms of goals, not forever, but it might have been the top of your mountain to hit for this year or early because you've had such a great start to the year. You might have anticipated doing that later in the year.
Yeah.
But what you now have to, important thing for super high performers, you have to reset them goals.
Correct.
And don't just be right off the year now because you've done everything you need to do. So like what does the future look like for you, do you hope?
Well, look, there is a next step because there's partner, right? So that's, the next thing to be striving for, I guess. Look, definitely just continuing to be consistent, really making sure that when people think of selling a property in ranches, but not even just in ranches, also buying an investment, their family needs a property in other areas, just being someone that people go, you need to speak to Talia Besser. That's the person you need to speak to. And the only way I'm going to do that is obviously making sure every person that I have any kind of, interaction with in a transaction that they're 100% happy and they write a review.
Absolutely.
Obviously. And just making sure that people just know who I am with the brand, of course, and working on that.
Nice. And so what motivates you to get to that next step then, in sense of like, is it if you got, do you have investments out here yourself? I know it's a bit of a personal question. Are you looking to build back in Australia? Like what's your kind of like future? Can you see yourself in Dubai for the very long term, or is maybe moving back and getting in with the family business or adding to that, or is that down the line for you?
I can't say that I'm someone that is a big planner, if I'm honest with you, Tom. I kind of live, let's say on a yearly kind of target. I think definitely buying and doing further investments is on the agenda for sure. I would definitely like to maybe even buy something in ranches and do a project for sure.
Proper skin in the game then.
Proper skin in the game. Really just kind of making sure that, okay, we've done one obviously and as I said to you earlier, that's, something that we might be moving away from. So moving into something that is bigger and better. And by doing that, it also helps me with, what I do with my clients, which is I'm usually kind of around people that are buying properties, renovating them and then reselling them. So just having the experience of doing it myself as well, it's really kind of putting your money where your mouth is. Absolutely. As well.
Yeah, it'd be pretty powerful when you can take people out on viewings and showing them
my own
different
property.
Stages through yours, from breaking walls to having an amazing property. Correct. I'm sure you could add a lot of value there, even more. So that was exciting.
Yeah.
Well, look, Talia, we'll leave it. I think that's quite a good point to leave it there, but we don't want to lose you from the business just yet. So just put any future plans. Was that
a question that you were asking about going back to the family? Was that a trick question, Tom, where you're like,
just leave that for another 5-10 years or so. Make sure you get that partner title first.
Yes.
And then we'll think about it.
Exactly.
But no, look, whatever happens in the future, it'll be, I think that from seeing you from day one to where you are now, even though I've not worked directly with you that whole time, but you for sure are an inspirational figure in the office, and I'm sure to males, females, or anywhere it goes, it shows it doesn't matter what background you've got, doesn't matter where you're from, doesn't matter what sex, race, religion, whatever, you can be super successful if you just put your all into this and you just treat every client like that is your family business, like it is your your personal brand, exactly, that you you should be telling people 10 things not to buy before you tell them the one thing to buy, that sort of attitude. And I think the reviews, all this thing just adds up to, and it's not about rapid rise to success, because these things sometimes just small building blocks, but for sure, like it goes to show that now all that work you've put in the previous 4 years plus, whatever,
5 years,
is now this year now paying off.
100%.
And I'm sure it will continue to go even more. I'm really excited to see what the future holds for you.
Thank you.
I'm sure it'll be huge.
Thank you.
But thank you. We'll leave it there. I really appreciate your time, so you can get back to doing what you do best in the deals.
Let's try sell some houses.
Exactly. But for everyone listening, thank you so much. If you've taken any inspiration from Talia, she's now big on social media. Follow her. You can hear her singing as well. That's a rare treat.
Go on my page,
find her YouTube videos from when she was on in Australia on the block. But no, reach out to her directly. All our phone numbers on the website. If you want any further questions or anything answering or just taking any inspiration from it, we'd love to hear from you. And if you think it's a career that you could see yourself doing, like Talia, joining from wherever you are around the world, then we're open to chat and put you in touch with anyone you need to. But thank you so much. If you can just give us a follow and follow us all on our social channels and wherever you get your podcast from. This will be coming out shortly. So we appreciate your time and for listening. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tom, for having me. It was an amazing chat.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.